This episode is brought to you by The Front Porch. The Front Porch, located at 29th Street between Mission and San Jose Avenue, has been serving delicious Southern comfort food since 2006. This converted 19th century brownstone garage is loaded with the best fried chicken in San Francisco, as well as country Creole cuisine and the kindest Southern Mission hospitality. They're open 7 nights a week for dinner and for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. Want to go south but can't make the trip? Then just head south on Valencia Street. Enjoy delicious cocktails from your curated cocktail list. Have a tasty local beer on draft, or a perfectly paired glass of wine with your gumbo, jambalaya, blackened sole, and so much more. Pair it all with a side of friends and family. And starting today and running through the end of May, mention Storied when you dine at the Front Porch and get 10% off your bill. How cool is that? Write your next story at The Porch, located at the foot of Bernal Heights for nearly 20 years.
I also love that when I do leave my neighborhood and I pop over to some other random part of town, whether it's down by the ballpark or in the Mission or even in the marina, which I don't go to very often, I can still always find people that I know, love, that I know probably overlap with you and a few other people in the network and community. And I love that. The city is, at times it feels too small, but at the same time, doesn't it always then feel like you're never not local?
That was artist / bartender / nonprofit arts organizer / friend of the show, Kundan Baidwan. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast about artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city unlike any other in the world. In this episode, part 2 of 2, hear all about Kundan's adventures after college. They include stints in New York and Paris before coming back and laying down roots here in San Francisco. Besides being in our Keep It Local show in late May, check out Kundan's solo show at Hotel Biron, up now through May 21st. Here's the rest of my conversation with Kundan Baidwan. So it's like late summer, you said 96?
96. I graduated. I graduated high school, and my sister was, I think she was doing like a something abroad-ish I don't know. My sister and her friends were about to go to Europe for the summer, and I was lucky enough to have my mom and my uncle convince my sister to let me tag along with them.
Oh, fun.
Even though I'm 5 years younger, mm-hmm. And that was my my graduation present from my folks, and my uncle was paying for me to go to this backpacking adventure, pay for my Eurail pass and all that stuff. And yeah, I adventured around Europe with them, and then my sister and I branched off, went to India, visited some family, and then I moved to San Diego. And
had you been there before? Had you visited?
Growing up, we went to San Diego a decent amount.
Okay.
And my folks had a lovely family that we were good friends with down there, so we would stay with them. And then that same friend of my mom's who used to live here in San Francisco actually ended up moving to, I'm forgetting which beautiful, Del Mar.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
like skate park there. Back
it was, there's always been a nice little connection. I think, again, California, my family, we grew up road tripping, so road tripping was always fun. Go down to the zoo, go down to Ensenada. Why not?
Yeah.
A little Mexican adventure for a day.
Yep.
So yeah, we kind of were always going there. My sister was already there for college, and then was there into law school. And yeah, so San Diego felt like an easier jumping off point as opposed to just being a total fish out of water in a very expensive city that I probably couldn't have afforded then. I mean, who can afford it at any time? But
at any time.
Yeah, I went to college there, and again, I intended on studying psychology, and just found myself more and more in art classes and film classes. So I switched around my major. And
did you just swap them? Or
I was fortunate that I was in a part of the university where you had these programs of concentration, mm-hmm. which were kind of like minors to give you a more well-rounded. You had to pick things that were outside of the same sect of from your major.
Right.
So like if your major was in the liberal arts, then you wanted like a soft science and a hard science, you know, that kind of. So so it wasn't too difficult. I mean, I took an extra year because why not? And then I met some friends, and one guy was not a full-time student. He was an auxiliary student, but he wanted to move to New York because he had gotten into NYU, and supposed to move with another friend. And then September 11th drastically changed that path.
You mentioned 5 years, so
Yeah,
that's the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought I was going to move to New York and be an artist and just make it big and all the whole 9 yards, and had to kind of put the whole plan on hold for a little while. And then one friend did not decide to move to New York, but my friend Ben and I decided to actually move, and we moved to Brooklyn. Williamsburg, Brooklyn in
It was like
2000.
2003?
Yeah, beginning of 2002. I actually ended up in Paris for a weird little spat because
It sounds
why not?
passive.
Why not? Why not?
Somehow
when, you
I
know,
ended up in Paris.
I was very fortunate. I have a cousin who lived in Paris for decades, but she was looking for some cheap labor to help out with a restoration of a mural in the Sorbonne. And I really wasn't doing much of anything, waiting for Ben to wrap up stuff in San Diego and for us to move to New York. So I went to Paris for a little sidebar, and it was amazing. And it was, you know, highly recommend if you can get some. I mean, I'm fortunate I was able to visit Paris when I was younger. I did a summer program there when I was in college. So it was, and my cousin, like I said, had lived there for decades. So it was, you know, getting around kind of felt a little comfortable.
You had an inn.
I had an inn. And yeah, even my crappy high school French, you know, you learn a lot when you're kind of thrown in it. And my cousin Anita definitely also made me run errands, and the most cruel yet I'm also very proud of myself was sending me to the dry cleaner. Because explaining things to a dry cleaner in Paris, wow, they don't have much patience for you.
Yep.
The greengrocer thought I was hilarious. I just laughed at all of her jokes. So cool.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it was Paris was an awesome experience. Paris will always have an amazing part of my soul. Like, just I feel like I learned a lot about myself.
How long were you there?
Just a couple of months for a couple of times. Like that summer, I was there for a couple of months, and then a couple of months at the end of 2001, beginning of 2002. But it was enough to really get my feel for yeah, just kind of moving about in a big chaotic city, and then moving to New York, big chaotic city. I definitely felt lost for a little minute because it's big, and I've never, you know, you're a student all of a sudden going into the abyss, getting a job at somebody's friend's restaurant that your friend's friend manages, and yeah,
people usually compare San Francisco and New York. I don't know that anyone's.
I can understand why people do, and there are certain ways that you can explain them in relation to each other, but there is no comparison.
For sure, but at least I understand why. I don't think anyone's ever compared, like, you compare your experience, because you lived in both, but like, oh, let's think about the ways that San Diego and New York are like, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because they're absolutely not.
Again, you could get on some weird philosophical tip about how then, you know, what part is LA and which part is Jersey and which part is, you know, if we really want to look at the bigger map area around.
It's a spin-off podcast.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
But yeah, New York was a lot of fun. Again, learning how to be my own person, having been on the younger end of the spectrum of siblings, cousins, everyone. It was, I jokingly say that I refer to it as my postgraduate education.
Right,
even though
you're
I
a
was
young
not
adult.
in school, I learned so much about the world, about my life, about me. Sometimes people laugh when I get a little zealous about things. I sound like I'm from New York, and I was like, oh no, I'm not from New York. I just learned to have my own voice there. Yeah, so it was a crazy time, and you know, I was burning my wick at both ends, and
Doing art?
no,
What were you doing
living
there?
life and having all the fun.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Having all the fun. I mean, I was working at a music venue, which at times could be soul sucking, but at the same time, I was exposed to so many amazing genres of music that, again, I was very fortunate that I grew up in a house where my dad was listening to Johnny Cash and classical, like, guzzle music, and my mom was listening to the Beatles and Elvis and Jim Reeves, and there was Bollywood music, and then my sister was listening to like Depeche Mode and The Cure and Duran Duran, and so I got into that, and then my brother started listening to rap and metal, and like I think I always was a music sponge. I was very fortunate because I grew up, like I said, in the environment I did, dancing to like traditional Punjabi music, so much. And then moving to New York and working at a music venue, I mean, I was in the morning working the gospel choir brunch, and at night there was death metal 4 bands all at once. Like,
oh my God.
It was such a trip, and I made such amazing friends.
What were you doing there? What was your job?
I was a waitress at a music venue and then became a bartender there. Being a waitress was also, usually it could be a perk if you really liked the musician. It was punishment if you didn't.
Right.
But you could become the band server, and that's how I became friends with B.B. King. And
how is he?
He was dirty but sweet. As you would expect an old blues man to be.
Perfect.
That was kind of a trip. I didn't work one show one year because it was one of my best friend's birthdays, and apparently nobody was happy. He was very attached to the people that he grew to know at the venues. It was the B.B. King Blues Club, but he didn't own it. He licensed his name, but he was there a couple times a year, and it was a real honor to be able to take care of, and just such a trip to be like. I took one of my nieces to see him in Bakersfield at the Fox Theater, and as we walked up, like because the dressing rooms in there were all in these narrow pathways going up steep staircases, so they were kind of hanging out by the tour bus, and they're like, our girl from New York, and they were like so sweet. And I just, even when I moved back to California and I was here in San Francisco, like I got that kind of loving, warm reception from BB and his.
So you
his
reconnected
band.
with him out here.
Yeah, I got to see him a couple of times. I took one of my coworkers who got me the job at Zam Zam. I took her to meet him and hang out backstage and on his bus and have him propose to me again. It was very flattering, but he proposed to a lot of women, so. But still, I felt special.
He cast a white net. Was that job in New York, was that your first bartending gig ever, or?
I was also working with a catering company, so I was doing some bartending for the cater waiter jobs, but, I kind of, that was my first real bartending job, and I learned just by watching them and asking them what went in stuff, and, if they weren't going to train me, then I was gonna figure out how to do the job, and they had to throw me behind a satellite bar because they had a random ticket boost one night and they needed another bartender, and I was like, okay, I can do basic things, and it's a life skill that you can definitely take with you pretty much anywhere.
Correct.
And when I was moving back from New York, it was like where to go. My sister was in LA. She had left law to pursue writing for television or working in television, and LA wasn't feeling like a good fit.
Did you try it though?
I mean, I visited. I stayed with her for a while, but a friend of mine, one of my college friends, the girl I was supposed to move to New York with, she was now married and living in Palo Alto, and let me crash with her while I was figuring out how to get my way into San Francisco, because this felt like the natural fit. It felt like the right fit for me, and and then I got a job here. I did like a whole 9 to 5 working in an engineering firm, and I was a receptionist, and then I worked my way up, and then I got laid off in 2009.
Yep.
So
can I ask though, what made you leave New York? Sounds like you were having a really good time.
That's all I was doing.
That's all. Okay.
I just wasn't like I painted a little bit, but
You weren't fulfilled. Is that fair to say?
I was just being young and dumb
Young and
and
stupid,
having a blast. But I wasn't actually, I had nothing to show for it. I had, like I said, great friends, great experiences, but there's only so long you can just, keep kind of floating.
Right.
And
the idea of leaving, you're like, maybe LA, but but definitely San Francisco.
San Francisco, like I said, it just felt, again, even though my parents weren't in the Bay anymore, I still had a lot of family here in the Bay, still do. A few of my cousins have moved to San Francisco, like, in those years, so San Francisco it felt like a more natural fit for me, and, now we are, like, 18 years later.
Yep.
And it's, yeah.
You didn't know that at the time. Maybe your gut knew it, but you didn't know it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, again, that was just, it felt like such a natural fit because it gave me all of the fun city life of New York, but also was home. It was California. It was a slightly slower pace. It's a little bit less of a rat race. I mean, back then, at least.
Correct.
Yeah. And yeah, I was, like I said, I was crashing with a different friend, childhood friend, part of that, like, Punjabi crew, the Maharanis that I grew up with. I started crashing with her when I got the job. And
What part of town?
She was living in Cow Hollow.
Okay.
And my job was at the North Point Center in kind of Fisherman's Wharf area.
Oh, yeah, Safeway. R.I.P., I think they closed?
Yeah, I think that one closed.
Yeah, there used to be...
The Trader Joe's
is still there. There used to be a Radio Shack when they existed.
There was a 24-hour fitness in our building as well. Yeah.
There was a fucking telescope store in there.
Why not?
And I loved
not?
it. I just go look at the telescopes. Anyway.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I worked there for a couple years, and then I got laid off, and then I traveled because I already had some travel plans.
Did you go anywhere that you hadn't been already, or?
Yes. So one of the first fun travels of that year was my mom's birthday. We wanted to take her to Memphis and to Graceland.
Yes.
So we did that trip, and then I had a bunch of cousins from England mainly. They were doing a big family trip for my dad's one of his elder sisters. I forget what milestone birthday of hers it was, but also a couple of her daughters had milestone birthdays. My mom also. So we just it was this big fun family trip to Spain. I was like... And then my friend Ben, who I'd moved to New York with, we were going to go to India for like a month or so. And then I was like, well, I ain't got no job. Let's just extend it. So we traveled for I think over almost 3 months for me.
Wow.
And he was there for 2. We went to so many parts of India that as many times as I've been, you go visit family over and over again.
Right.
Which again... awesome, because I can be 47 now and have all these great relationships with people that lived on the other side of the planet.
Literally.
But because I saw them regularly-ish, if it wasn't every year, every other year, but I also was like this huge, amazing, complex country, and I keep seeing the same places over and over again. So it was amazing to be able to just travel around. And also, I feel like travel, man, puts you in some situations where you want to turn on the person you're traveling with, but you work through it, you get through it, and we experience so many wonderful things. Like, just, yeah.
It's not just a test, it's a series of tests, right? It tests you, and it either makes or breaks you, I feel like.
But the reward, even just the really simplest things, were so worth it.
Yep.
Constantly. And I can still look back on that trip. And that was 14 years ago that I went. And
this is after you lost your job.
After I lost my job.
Yeah.
And then I lost my apartment here. I'm not going to speak about the landlord.
All good.
But, I ended up finding another friend. I ended up, so like I was saying, my coworker that I had taken to meet B, she used to work in Times Square, or not, I was in Times Square. The club I worked at was in Times Square. She worked in Hell's Kitchen, neighboring neighborhood, just a little bit further out, and at a great little bar that also had music, and I would go to her bar sometimes after my club had closed, and I was told I should look her up. When I got out here, I lost the phone that I had her number in, didn't think it was going to happen. Ended up looking for my first apartment after my friend had let me couch surf. My two friends, my one in Palo Alto and the one up here in Cal Hollow. I finally got this apartment in the Haight, and I was looking, while I was looking for these apartments, met up with a friend from college. This one bar really intimidates me, and it was Zam Zam, and I was like, I'm not intimidated by any bar. Walk in there, look at this woman, and I know her, can't figure it out. End up getting the apartment in the neighborhood, come back again and again to this bar because it's amazing, and I finally somebody said her name in such a way that it clicked, and I was like, Tay, I know how we know each other. And she was like, oh yeah. And at this point we were joking that we knew each other in a former life, like she was Cleopatra, I was her handmaiden, something like we don't I don't know why we didn't talk about New York, either of us, but I was like, it was Tobacco Road. And when I said it clicked with her. She remembered the friends that I used to come in with, and it was amazing because we weren't really friends then. We were cool with each other, but we didn't know each other. And one of her coworkers gave me her number, and again, never made it happen. But the universe was definitely going to make sure that we did come into each other's lives. And then when I told her that I'd been laid off and was just kind of traveling in between and figuring it out while everybody else is also looking for work.
Everybody.
And then she whispered about, like, in my ear, if I'd be willing to maybe fill in at a bar. And I was very particular because my back was busted, and I was like, I don't want to, no kegs, no this. That's got to be low key. I want it to be. And she was describing Zam Zam, as was I. And so she's the one who got me to start as a temporary fill-in, I think 13 years ago.
Okay, so that was like around 2012.
I think
then.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or was that? No, did I just have my 14th? I don't know. I've been there a long time.
Something like that.
I think it's about 14
Something like
years
that.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You started as a like a fill-in?
A temporary
bartender?
fill-in. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
what were your impressions right away?
It was a kooky bar that I loved going to. I was very fortunate that I found an apartment that was walking distance from the bar, and it just had a nice culture around it, a nice vibe, and the Haight, as much as it's a tourist destination to a lot of people, it is a real community
for sure.
And it can be really, sometimes much like family, it can be a little bit like oppressive. You're like, oh my gosh, please, can everybody get out of my business? But at the same time, like, you're so lucky to have so many people that do care about your business and want to make sure that you're good. And when you have an art show, they come out and they want to support. And I'm very fortunate that I found my way into this community, not only living but also working in it. Like I said, it affords me this ability to, work my job as a bartender there, and also dedicate time to my art and my nonprofit and my family. That's never going anywhere. My family is always going to be hugely important. And I found love on Haight. My partner Chris, we're coming up on 11 years.
Amazing.
But it's a. Yeah, like I said, for all the choices I could have made different growing up, I'm pretty happy with where I ended up. So
you are where you are.
Yeah.
Can I fast forward just a little bit to where our lives intersected? Because I want to know, when we met you in 2018 in the summer, you knew the history of Zam Zam forward and backwards. Like, we could not have been luckier to have walked into the bar and had you be working there that day with our microphones.
The fact that you had your recording equipment was a little crazy. Stupid,
intimidating, or you can be honest.
Well, I'm usually not good in front of a microphone.
You were fucking amazing that day. So,
because I had the safety of being behind a bar.
Oh, right.
That's
and controlling.
It's like my Linus security blanket is having that 3
for
feet
sure
of Formica between me and the rest of y'all.
Huge. What I want to know is, when you started, let's just say even as a fill-in, when did you really get to know forward and backwards the history of the place? Because that's what, besides you're just fucking cool.
Thank you.
And charming, You knew it. And like you were, yeah, again, you were the perfect person for what Bitch Talk needed that day.
This part is definitely like, this is how you can tell. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've been told I look like my mother, like her little mini doppelganger or whatever. Maybe not so many anymore, but I am very much also my father's daughter, and that I nerd out about history. And that's part of what I love about Zam Zam, is it's just got this very unique look, vibe, and history. And when I started working there, the current owner, Bob, he would be there for the first hour or so of my shift. And so I would ask him questions, because sometimes people would ask me questions, and I would just pick his brain. And between, when you have basically the horse's mouth right there, just pour a little bit more vodka and you're great, And the boss loved telling me stories, and I loved absorbing the stories, and doing a little bit of research about where Bruno, the previous owner, was born, and his family, and how it was his father who opened the bar. And it was just, there's something very precious about that, and it's such a unique little sliver of San Francisco history that the least I could do, and again, I love telling it, but I feel like the least I could do to honor the place that gave me this sort of second life. I'd sworn off bartending, but found my way into this kind of back-asswardly. But the least I could do to honor it would be able to tell people, you are in a very special bar. You are in something that has witnessed so much change. I mean, we opened 11 days after Pearl Harbor, watching the city all of a sudden change so drastically. The country, long before there was such a thing as a hippie or even a hipster, and then having that change, and how Bruno and Zam Zam was able to forego it. It's just, like I said, it is like a little magical, awesome spot that I love sharing with a willing participant. I mean, there's plenty of idiots, and I was like, no, you don't need to be here. You can go.
You don't deserve it.
You don't deserve it.
Yeah.
No, you're not. And I also say that to some people when they come in, that, I walked by a million times, and I was like, you just weren't ready for it, Right. It is like I said, it's a real vibe. And if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. It's not right for you. But
you should see, because I've been wearing my Zam Zam hoodie lately, you should see the reaction I get. It's like no other item of clothing I wear. Strangers will come up to me, oh, I love that bar. And not only just I love that, it was like, this is what I love about it, la 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 la. It evokes things for people.
And when you had come in the first time I met you, it was on this Anthony Bourdain sort of crawl, and it was a few months after he had passed away.
Let's talk about that.
I had to work the day that he passed away, and I was very upset. I mean, Kitchen Confidential was a very transformative reading for me, I could feel myself in a lot of his words and his verbiage, and just the experiences. And I was also, when I got laid off, I was also considering going into culinary school, and I was like, a friend of mine was like, read this and The Making of a CIA Chef to make sure you're doing what you want to do. But working that day, I thought it was going to be much more difficult, and just, he was just so beloved. Like I said, because he spoke for the industry, and a fierce advocate for being a better human, leave this place better than you found it, kind of thing. And if you can't, do your damnedest to try. But
and also something I think central to him and to Zam Zam is talk to the stranger.
Yes. Yeah. Actually,
try, engage. I don't know.
And that's one of the many reasons I love Zam. But when the day that he passed and I worked, it was so comforting how many people came in to have a drink in his honor, but be the most respectful. To not make a big show of it, not be like, I remember the time he was on the TV show and he came. No, nobody was making a big show of it.
Right.
People literally, they got their drink, they just, they cheers their friends. They said to Tony, to the chef, everybody was very respectful, and very, very much feeling fortunate that they could step in the places he stepped into, maybe sit on the bar stool he sat on, that kind of thing.
Amazing.
So it was I felt very fortunate that, I'm a part of that little bit of this amazing bar's legacy. I've seen some of these sort of pivotal times. You know, I feel like for some of us in our generation, particularly in the industry, like where were you when you found out Tony died? You know, I think that's something that resonates, and it resonated with y'all,
and now we're friends.
I know,
He brought us together. That is how we met, and that was fucking amazing. That episode ended up running on Storied as well, which is how your first foray into my sphere. And then you've been. I want to talk. We have to talk about your art because
that little thing I do on the side.
You are the one person who's been in all of my art shows, and you're going to be in the one coming out in May.
Yes.
So you came back to San Francisco. You did this and that. You ended up bartending at Zam Zam. When did you figure out, oh, this is all working for me? I'm living here. I'm loving it, and I'm going to do art.
So art actually came back into my life before I started working at ZAM.
It was first.
I was still, like I said, I was still painting a bit. You know, I painted some while I was in New York and did a couple commissions. But when I moved back, I pretty much stopped. My sister wanted a painting for my nephew, and so I did that. But I was still working at the engineering firm. I didn't really... I don't know. Art was kind of, okay, I guess that was something I did in my youth and my folly, whatever. It's fine. It's past. But then a cousin of mine, one of the many, he's a physician here, and he was going to take over a couple more exam rooms, and he was going to order, like, images to be printed on a canvas. So it was like a fake painting. And I was like, yo, I'm an unemployed person, artist right here. How about you let me paint something? And I'd never done anything abstract. And I said, well, let me try it. If you don't like it, then don't buy them.
That's bananas to hear now that you had never done, because
that's all I do.
It's what you do now.
I know. Yeah.
And this is like 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something?
2011, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And... he let me paint in his garage. I could walk from my lower height. He was on top of Buena Vista. He liked what I was doing. And he cut me a check for both when I was like not even done with the first one. He believed in me and then continued to let me paint in his garage. And then when I got the opportunity to work at ZAM, it helped. It was allowed me to do both. And my roommate at the time was doing her own sort of side art curation thing, and to kind of feed, even though she was working in a sort of arts environment. I mean, it was an arts environment. It just, her creativity, I don't think, was being nourished. And so she did this on her own, and she was my first curator, did my first solo show in San Francisco.
Where was that?
At Heart Wine Bar in the Mission. It was on like 24th and Valencia, I want to say.
Up Valencia, yeah.
And I did really well with that show, and it gave me the impetus to really just explore. I think also in college and everything, I was so hell-bent on actually learning the skill and the classical way of doing things before I wanted to break the rules. Now I've been doing abstract art for a long time. Basically only abstract art. A couple of random things.
We're recording at Minibar. Is this your first show to curate?
This is my first proper, curatorial.
Do you want to talk about that at all before we wrap? Okay, yeah.
So I've been showing at Minibar for several years now. Very fortunate that friends working here put my name in with management, and I got to start showing here several years ago. And I've been fortunate to show here regularly over the years.
Can I, for the record, for my listeners, say that the reason I got connected with doing a show at Minibar was because I came here, saw your art, and I was like, I wanted to do a show here, and I was like, I'm going to talk to Kundan.
And
because she must know them.
Of course, yeah.
And then it happened.
And everybody, the whole premise of this bar is to showcase art. It has been since it opened. And so I love that that this bar has fostered that community and that level. And, you know, I saw one of my first mini bar art patrons just last night. You know, it was
awesome.
I actually had to like kind of be like, oh my God, David, you were my first mini bar art patron.
Yes.
However many years ago. And I love that I've still been able to be a part of this art scene on the Diviz corridor. But I started a nonprofit with a childhood friend of mine who's a musician. It's called Rootstock Arts, and it's, you know, Samir is well versed in the nonprofit world. He had an arts music nonprofit in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Raga Massive, but he moved back here a few years ago, and we started our own arts nonprofit, and it has been very music oriented. But part of the reason I'm a part of, not just because, I mean, I love Samir, he's one of my best childhood friends, longest childhood friends, and, you know, to be able to do something like this, to not only, you know, celebrate our own art practices, but also lift up our entire community of creatives, is just something I think both of us have loved, and I think both of us got that from our parents, you know, fostering your community. You know, my dad and Samir's dad started at IBM in the 70s, you know, like at the same time. So, yeah, it feels very full circle to be able to start something with him. And then part of that, like I said, me being the visual artist of the founders, was to be the curator. And this is my first time curating an art show.
Not your last?
It will definitely not be my last.
Yep.
It is stressful. There's a lot to manage and to consider that does not get seen in the final product, but wow, if it isn't rewarding. And to see friends and, you know, artists that are at different stages of their careers and never feeling like it's too late or you're too green to be a part of this world, whoever is being the gatekeeper, go around them, find people like me, find other people like you who make it happen in a friend's garage, make it happen in a small local bar, make your space to be seen, heard, appreciated, and bring some folks with you. Right?
I love that. Yeah,
I think that's more or less the philosophy of Rootstock, and I think just me in general.
And you in general, for sure. Hats off. You did a fucking killer show. I'm sorry that it has to come down at some point, but you'll be back. And in fact, just for listeners, you will be in the show that we're doing, Keep It Local, at the end of May. More details on that soon. But speaking of Keep It Local, I'd like to wrap now. And I want to hear your thoughts on, that is the theme of the show. It's also the theme of this season of the podcast. Keep it local. Like, your life, I feel like, speaks to that. But
sometimes my life is very hyper local.
So what does that phrase mean to you?
It is that I really can sort of, I can function within a very small radius. You know, everything I need. There's a post office. There's a hardware store. There's 2 hardware stores within walking distance. You know, like I don't necessarily have to get out of my neighborhood, which is a little bit of a blessing and a curse for San Franciscans. Is that you don't have to leave your neighborhood, but that whenever I am in my neighborhood and I need something, when I'm walking to work, when I'm walking to the post office, when I'm walking to the market, I see people I know and that I love, and that it feels like it's not a big, faceless, anonymous city. It's a series of communities. It's a series of networks and neighborhoods. And I also love that when I do leave my neighborhood and I pop over to some other random part of town, whether it's down by the ballpark or in the Mission or even in the Marina, which I don't go to very often, I can still always find people that I know, love, that I know probably overlap with you and a few other people in the network and community. And I love that. The city is, at times it feels too small, but at the same time it always doesn't feel like you're never not local. You know, even when you're going to random parts of the city.
That was Kundan Baidwan. Look for Kundan, who'll be among 6 women artists in next month's Keep It Local show in the South of Market. More details soon, but mark your calendar for the May 23rd opening party. On Thursday, check back in this space for a bonus episode with Lincoln Mitchell, author of 3 Years Our Mayor, his latest book all about the life of George Moscone. And we'll be back next week with another feature episode, this one with 415 Zines Lane and Fredo. Episode 13 drops next Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was created, curated, and produced by Otis McDonald. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in the 7th season, we have more than 250 episodes available wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out the refreshed website, which I'm still working hard to repopulate with all the episodes. That's storiedsf.com. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. You can also rate us on Spotify. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky at storiedsf. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay weird, stay informed, keep your eyes open, and we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.